For generations, the path seemed super clear. Go to college, get that degree, and land a good job. It was the promise. But in a world where tuition costs are through the roof and AI is changing everything, that promise is, well, it's being seriously questioned. So today we're going to dig into the data to try and answer one of the biggest questions out there. Is a college degree actually still worth it? All right, let's just get right to it. Yeah, it's a blunt question, I know, but it's the one a whole lot of people are asking themselves. This feeling that college might be a bad investment, it's growing, and it's being fueled by some really valid fears about debt and what the job market actually looks like. And look, this isn't just a feeling. An analysis by Indeed found that nearly half of young graduates feel like their degree was a waste. And why? Well, it's this toxic cocktail of soul-crushing student debt and this nagging fear that technology, especially AI, is making their expensive credentials obsolete before they even get a chance to use them.
And it's not just recent grads feeling this way. You've got huge names like Mark Zuckerberg echoing the exact same things. He's argued that the traditional college system often completely fails at its main job, getting students ready for the real world of work, while at the same time burying them under a mountain of debt. When you hear that kind of skepticism from the top, you know the ground is definitely shifting.
So all this doubt, it's not just coming out of nowhere. It's actually tied to this really powerful economic force that's been quietly reshaping the job market for years. The concept is called degree inflation. Okay, so what does that even mean? Well, to put it simply, degree inflation is what happens when a credential, like a bachelor's degree, becomes less valuable because suddenly everyone has one. The value of your individual degree goes down, and you end up with this super crowded marketplace where way too many educated people are fighting for way too few jobs that actually need that degree.
And I think this is a really helpful way to understand it. You've got the cause and the effect side by side. The cause is something called credentialism. That's when employers start demanding a degree for jobs that never needed one before. It's just a filter. And the effect? That's degree inflation. Because everyone is forced to get that degree just to apply, the degree itself stops being a special advantage. It just becomes the minimum price of admission.
Okay, so the story of feeling ripped off is pretty compelling, right? But what if we put the feelings aside for a second and just follow the money? To do that, we're going to look at a massive report on return on investment from the Colorado Department of Higher Education. And wow, this first piece of data really tells the story. I mean, the numbers here are just crystal clear. The more education you have, the less likely you are to be out of a job. In Colorado, the unemployment rate for someone with a bachelor's degree is almost half the rate of someone with just a high school diploma. That is a huge real-world advantage. Okay, but unemployment is one thing. What about the actual paycheck? This is where things get really interesting. Because if you only look at how much people are making 1 year after they graduate, the report shows there's not a giant difference. Whether you have a certificate, an associate's degree, or a bachelor's degree, you're all kind of starting in the same ballpark. And this right here, this is where so much of the skepticism comes from. People ask, why would it pay for a 4-year degree if the immediate payoff is the same?
Well, because it turns out year one is a total head fake. The real story unfolds over the long haul, like year 10. And this is the killer chart. Over a decade, the wage growth for someone with a bachelor's degree absolutely skyrockets. It grows by over 50%. That's way more than other credentials. This is where the ROI really shows up. A bachelor's degree isn't just about getting your first job. It's about setting up the entire trajectory of your earning potential for life. But here's the thing. The data also shouts something else loud and clear. Just having a bachelor's degree isn't the end of the story. Not even close. The return you get on that investment depends massively on two really big choices: what you decide to study and, just as important, how long it actually takes you to finish. So let's really dig in here. How much does your major, your field of study, really move the needle on your financial future? Oh yeah, a huge amount, according to this data. Just look, 5 years out of college, a STEM major in Colorado is pulling in over $71,000 a year. Now compare that to an arts and humanities major making closer to $49,000. Think about that. That's a $22,000 gap every single year based only on the major you picked. So yeah, your major matters a lot. But wait, it's not just your major. There's this other kind of sneaky factor that can totally tank your ROI, and that's time. The price you see on the brochure for college is one thing, But the hidden costs of taking longer than you planned, they can be absolutely massive. You know, we all call it a four-year degree, right? Well, that's not exactly true. For the average student in Colorado, it actually takes 4.5 years to finish. That extra semester isn't free. That's more tuition, more fees, and it's also 6 months of wages you lost because you weren't out in the workforce earning money.
And if you're wondering why, well, here's a big part of the reason. On average, students take 14 extra credits they don't even need to graduate. That's basically paying for a whole extra semester you didn't even need to take. These are those hidden costs that can turn what should be a great investment into a really tough financial burden.
Okay, so when you put all of this together, it's pretty obvious the old advice, just go get any degree, that's totally out the window. The whole conversation has to change. We have to start looking at higher education with a new set of rules and treat it like the massive financial investment that it is. So here's the new playbook. Instead of just asking, should I go to college, the questions have to be way smarter. You gotta ask, what's the actual price tag when you factor in extra time and credits? For the major I'm choosing, what's the 10-year earnings growth look like? And is this specific program at this specific school truly worth the cost? It's about shifting from a blind assumption to a calculated personal investment strategy.
And all of this really leads to one big final question for all of us. The data is pretty clear that the right degree is still a really powerful financial tool. But as technology keeps moving faster and faster, will that always be true? In the economy of tomorrow, is your value going to be defined by the piece of paper you earned years ago, or by the real skills you can prove you have right now?